Good afternoon. So, we have spoken this morning a lot about the repression regimes do in their own countries. That's for us kind of the convenience side of the story. The less convenient is about the repression that these regimes execute here in our own countries that we still allow them to do. And that is why today I want to talk about transnational repression and what we can do to stop it. The term transnational repression is quite a technocratic term. I'm not sure everybody knows what is behind that term. Victims do, people affected do, but maybe not everyone, and that's why I brought a little presentation, and it seems to work. Wonderful. I guess if you have been in Berlin for the last 2 or 3 days, you know this energetic person. My sister in spirit, Masih Ali-Nejad, together we are fighting the mullahs. The mullahs made her life very difficult inside Iran, which is why she had to seek refuge in the US. They didn't stop there. The mullahs sent agents, Russian agents, her way, trying to kidnap and kill her. It is a very traumatic story for her, as you can imagine. The good side, and that rarely happens, is they didn't get away with it. They just got a 25 years sentence. And if you think this only happens in the US, well, brace yourself. We have the same thing happening in UK, where an Iranian journalist was stabbed, and it wasn't actually only one. It's a systematic pattern of intimidation against journalists in UK, executed by Iran. It also happens in Germany. I don't know who's ever heard of the Blue Mosque, which was one of the hotbeds for Iranian propaganda, but also intimidation, especially in handling of opposition figures, which is quite an euphemistic term for what they have been doing. And although we managed to close the Blue Mosque, all of that intimidation still goes on. And if you think, well, it's only Iran, no. Chinese are running secret police stations all over Europe. Eritrean embassies are used to intimidate even random refugees here in the European Union, from stalking to any forms of harassment, and of course, the Russians. And since we have a lot of Belarusian dissidents here in the European Union, also transnational repression of the Russians here in Europe have grown. We speak of cases of assassination. I guess the Germans all know the term Tiergarten murder. Also just the peak of the iceberg, but there's happening a lot of blacklisting, coerced returns, surveillance, and others. And while none of that is new, the possibilities of digitalization, of AI, of cyber has given these regimes a lot of new tools. It's kind of transnational repression on steroids, what we see right now. Pegasus, spyware being used against Jamal Khashoggi's wife, is maybe only the most prominent case. But what we see is basically there's no escape. Cyber is used to intimidate exilees, diaspora, dissidents all over the world. So it is clearly a global phenomenon we are looking at. Thanks to Freedom House report, we have kind of an overview of the peak of the iceberg of what is happening, although one needs to say that the self-proclaimed proponent of freedom of speech with his Doge department has just ended this very important project by cutting their funding. But what does the project tell us as of now? There are 3.5 million people at risk of transnational repression around the world. We have at least 44 perpetrator states, the number is growing. We have at least 100 countries where transnational repression is happening. These guys, and that's a non-exclusive list, cooperate, they learn from each other, they even share their links to different institutions of organized crime to increase their repression, so that by today we are kind of in the golden age of transnational repression. And if you now think, well, but it only happens to foreigners, let me tell you, that woman is maybe the most biologically German person that you can imagine. She has been attacked as well by a cyber attack, very deliberate, sophisticated cyber attack of the Iranians. And if you think, well, she should have better prepared, yes, prevention is an issue, but they can basically get everyone. That lady is the Senator of Justice of Berlin State, and she has been the Vice President of the German Domestic Secret Service before. So if they can get her, they can get everywhere. And that's exactly the message these regimes want to send. No one is safe nowhere. So, what do? Well, I think it's time that we start the golden age to stop transnational repression. And that's why I'm here for. Because, first of all, we are not alone. And especially those affected by transnational repression are not alone. Already 2 years ago, the Council of Europe has issued an agenda and a very good resolution on what to do against the threat of transnational repression. So have G7 leaders just earlier this year. So has the UN. And I like most that sentence. There is no international legal gap, but there is a dangerous protection, and I would say, and knowledge gap about transnational repression. So I think we have a number of goals together. First one, when exile means distance but not safety, let's make exilees feel safe to report these attacks, because today many don't, and that's why we don't have enough data, and that's why our protection is still so weak. When journalists are stalked by the regimes they escaped, let's step up protection. When threats follow people across borders, let's stand against autocrats. And when autocrats cooperate to increase their repression, which is what we see right now, let's cooperate even closer across institutions, because the response is super scattered right now, but also across democracies, especially EU member states. How do we get there? Well, there's a plan. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had a plan. So that's me in the European Parliament, because I've been just chosen as the rapporteur for a report on how to stop transnational repression in the European Union. That's the timeline. At the moment, I'm collecting input from stakeholders and victims. That's why I'm standing here. You'll see an email address in a second on how to get in touch with me. Then hopefully we will vote on that before the summer break, and then I will need you again for implementation all over Europe. And the goal of all of this is that we move from nowhere safe to now here safe all together. I just started the nice website Stop Transnational Repression EU. And if you are affected by transnational repression, if you represent people that are affected by transnational repression, if you work for an institution that kind of has some answers to how we deal with transnational repression, please reach out, mail at Transnational Repression EU, so that we make sure every knowledge that is already out there, we need to cooperate as well, gets into that report. Thank you, and now I will be listening carefully to what especially we can do in the digital sphere. And thank you all for your attention.